Okay, anyone here? No. Anyone here? No. Ah! For those unfamiliar with all things SCP, which stands for Secure, Contain, Protect, this fictional foundation is tasked with protecting the world from deadly objects, entities, and even supernatural beings. SCP first started on 4chan with an image of what is now the first SCP ever created, a bubbled butt and bloodied mouth creature that kills you when you break line of sight, which includes blinking. Today, it's a massive collaborative writing endeavor where budding horror and science fiction writers add to the mythos of the SCP universe. From new SCP creatures to stories, there's so much original content constantly being added, and that's where SCP Observer comes in. Created by a solo dev who's also an apprentice software developer, SCP Observer appears to be their first foray into game making. So, what's the game like? In short, it's very similar to the gameplay of another massive indie horror franchise, FNAF, or Five Nights at Freddy's. For some people, that comparison might be a negative, but as someone who does enjoy management-like gameplay and the tension that comes with it in these scary scenarios, I had a good time. You play as a security guard in the SCP Foundation, specifically in a building that houses multiple SCP creatures and entities that are kept under strict containment as scientists study them. Uh-oh. Coño mierda. But of course, something goes wrong, and for SCP fans, it's the usual way. The doors to the containment chamber for Mr. Bubblebutt aka SCP-173 won't shut. So it murders the test subjects in the room and escapes to go on a rampage throughout the facility. But you'll have more to contend with than just these deadly cheeks. Several other SCP are now on the prowl, ranging from a program that disrupts your camera feeds, to a demon-masked man, to a fleshy, four-legged creature with pincer-like limbs, and those are just the ones I've encountered. When all hell breaks loose, the only safe place left is your security booth. Sort of. You've got cameras, remote access to dangerous Tesla coils, and thick iron doors that you can bring up and down, but all of these take power to utilize. And your power supply is shockingly limited. It's constantly draining at 1%, and that goes up by 1 percentage point with every tool you use. Coño mierda. So whenever you activate a camera or use the doors, your usage meter goes up by 1 point per camera and per door. There's 2 cameras and 2 doors, so if you've got them all activated, that's 4 points, plus the one already built in, 5 points of percentage, and let me tell you, you might be like, oh, it's just 5 percentage points. No. The battery, or the energy, is kind of like a broken phone, the way that you charge it to 100%, but if the battery's messed up, it's gonna drain in like 30 minutes. It's that kind of deal. So if you try to use your cameras and keep the doors down at the same time, you're gonna find yourself out of power before rescue arrives. On top of that, there's also another SCP that messes with your cameras, which you have to click on to remove, otherwise each camera it messes with adds another percentage point of energy draining.
You totally blew it!
And let's not forget the random breakdown of your equipment, forcing you to run over and fix it before dashing back and checking if there are any creatures waiting for you at the door. How long do you need to last before rescue arrives? In-game, it comes out to 6 hours, and the game will hold you to that. I can't count how many times I died right at the 1 hour mark, running out of power just a touch too early. Side note, when I said 6 hours in game, I mean in game, not in real life. Real life, maybe it takes like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I don't know, but it's not 6 hours. It's okay. Coño mierda. If you run out of power though, the monsters won't kill you immediately. You've got about a 10 to 15 second buffer before one of the SCPs comes in and takes you out, which was actually just enough for me to survive the second level, or second scenario, as the game calls it. The sound design and atmosphere are on point for this game, and a good old indie horror fun experience. All you hear is the sound of your feet pacing around, the hum of the air conditioning, and sudden screams to disrupt the silence. If all that doesn't jar you, SCP Observer has one more trick up their sleeve. the Black Statue SCP. Known as SCP-650, this black mannequin-like statue randomly appears in your office behind you in a threatening pose, catching you by surprise when you turn around. Hence its colloquial name, the Startling Statue. This is the only jump scare in the game, and it doesn't kill you. It exists solely to mess with you and get your heart rate going. And wow, did this statue get me over and over and over again. Now, I didn't get to encounter all the SCPs because my punk baby butt couldn't make it past scenario 3. And as far as I can tell, there's 8 more scenarios, or a total of 8. So I might be wrong about this being the only jump scare, but please be gentle with me, it was quite spooky. Suffice to say, what you're seeing now is but a sample of what else awaits players in this game. However, there are some areas of growth in this game that stood out to me as I played, as well as during my breaks as I tried to collect myself from all the mannequin-induced scares.
𝐿𝐸𝐤𝐿!
First, I think that the energy drains too quickly. While I did learn that, like the original FNAF, you can ignore the cameras for the first couple of hours and save power that way, this was a pretty boring way to play. On top of that, it did take a lot of self-restraint not to click the cameras, even knowing nothing was going to happen. Boredom is worse than draining my battery and losing, it seems. Related to this issue is the lack of difficulty modes, unless you count the custom scenarios where you can dictate how active each SCP will be. I also strangely kind of wish there had been actual jump scares, or at least a spookier version of losing than the screen cutting to black and the sound of a snapping neck, or watching the wonky moving model of an SCP make its way to me in the security booth. While the fear of them getting in is already great, and the mannequin does a lot of heavy lifting in the startled department, the other SCPs didn't do much for the scares. Finally, I don't really get the use of the cameras and the Tesla coils. For the cameras, there are only 2 that are worth looking at, the blind spot cameras. If you see a monster there, you know to immediately bring the doors down and then check back in later to see if they're gone. For all the other cameras you have at your disposal looking at hallways and containment rooms, they didn't offer me any information that was useful and they just drained my battery, so I really only used the blind spot cameras, turning them on and off quickly just to check. As for the Tesla coils, they're so situation dependent that you'd have to be staring at the cameras non-stop to catch an SCP passing through and shock them at just the right time. And why would I do that if every second those cameras are on, they drain my energy further? I offer these critiques understanding that I only made it to scenario 3 in the game, but considering how the gameplay remained the same for the first 3, I think it's safe to say that the rest of the gameplay will follow suit, if not increasing in difficulty or switching up the pattern. Overall, I think SCP Observer is a fun little scare game with the anxiety-driving management mechanics, but it has its shortcomings that could make it harder for new or less experienced players to enjoy the full game. I have no choice. I'm at 5. Well, I'm gonna die. Hey, we made it to fucking 3 hours this time. Holy shit.